I can provide some consistency and continuity to the position and a high level of play, I mean, there was so many players that were receptive to what I could bring. Because the beneficiary of a good quarterback is good skill position players, good receivers, good tight ends, the line. I mean, I can improve all those positions just by me being me.
Tom, I want to thank you, first of all, for doing this podcast, because you've done 2 before, but we do have a streak going.
I think we should keep the streak going. If we break this streak, then I'm not as smart as you might think I am. So we're not breaking this.
All right. Well, let's just keep doing podcasts and winning Super Bowls. Tom, it's not often that you get access into the psychology of one of the greatest athletes of all time. And I want to start out by saying that it's one thing, from my experience, to have the freedom of new possibilities of going into a new situation like you did with Tampa Bay, versus having to cope with year after year high expectations like you had at New England. Just how different is it to go into the pressure of performing in a new situation?
First of all, I'd like to say thanks for having me on. I know we've done this a few times, but I think what I appreciate about what you're doing, David, is you have such a distinct point of view based on your experiences. And I think you're able to draw that out for the people that you interview, and you really allow great access for people to hear what's really going on because you ask the right questions. So, an interview is often as good as the interviewee. And I think you do a great job really tapping into what's really important. Certainly leadership is a big focus that as I've grown into over the years. And I think back to high school, it was something that was probably a little more natural for me than, I would say, running a 40-yard dash. I was a captain of my high school football team. I ended up being the captain of my college team. I was a captain of my pro team over all these years. And I think it's just more of a natural thing for me than some other things that have been much more challenging. And as I think about a new situation last year that I was coming into, I tried to apply a lot of the things I had learned over the years, and certainly a lot of the people that I have been around over the years that I have learned from. And, as we've talked about before, you're one of your beliefs, leadership is about caring for people, and being a lifelong learner and, curiosity and all those things I feel like have been really important to my overall success, but certainly going into a new situation last year as it kind of really knocks you in the face. Like, oh, this is where we're at. This is what we got to do, in order to get our team, going in the right direction. So much is about, process and, the plays and doing the right thing. But it's also about caring for one another, having aligned interests and, a goal of obviously winning a Super Bowl, which we had. But, ultimately for me, the quarterback, the great opportunity I have on the field is I actually get to do it. It's not like I'm in necessarily a management position. I get the opportunity to actually go out there and do it with my teammates. So I guess applying, these values of leadership, but actually being able to do them in the field with my teammates, is really one of the most rewarding experiences that I've ever had in my life. One of the amazing memories last year, I think, signing with the Bucs in March, going through coronavirus, but actually getting to know my teammates and seeing kind of, I was in my 21st season, so there was a lot of experience in football. Okay, this is where I think I can make the most of our time. This is how I feel like I can, whether that was a physical thing, whether it was a mental thing, this is the play that I like. This is where I think we need to improve physically. This is how you need to improve your route running. And then emotionally, us all being on the same page. So it's a lot of touch and feel too on a daily basis for me. And at the same time, trying to maintain my own level of performance. So a lot goes into it. And I think, like I said, it's very rewarding when it all comes together and you win. But more so than the win, I think the joy for the year for me was in the journey. And it was in the meeting a new group of people, and I had an amazing 2-decade career at one place, but then going to a new place and applying a lot of the things I had learned, plus learning a lot of new things from a new group of people, learning there are different ways to do things. When I was in one place, we did it one way. That was it. There was just one way to do things. I go to Tampa last year, and it's a different way, and that's okay. And we were able to achieve and perform at a high level in a different way, which really opened my eyes and was very satisfying of, okay, like this is a great way to win as well.
Tom, so many people ask themselves the wrong questions when they go into a new situation. It's like, what happens if I fail? What if what will others think if I don't win here? Did you have any of those inner dragons pop up in your head?
No, I didn't. That's a great question. And Larry Fitzgerald and I talked about this one time. What comes with failure and why that really limits people from succeeding, And again, I think there's a naivete about me that, what do you mean failure? I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, you try, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but it's not failing, And I think if you're thinking about failing, man, what if this doesn't go right? Yeah, it's really hard to be, your true, spontaneous, joyful self. You're trying to, not fail is a lot different than trying to succeed. The best players I've ever seen, when the moment's not too big for them, is they don't care what comes along with failure. They know how to deal with it, or they've dealt with it in the past, or, they understand, okay, this is not that big a deal. Let me just give it all I got. And, that's the way to ultimately go about things, is to not think about what happens if it doesn't go well. I mean, that'll set you back. You don't have much of a chance of success if you do that.
Well, what are the good questions you think that a leader needs to ask themselves when they go into a new situation?
I think obviously having a lot of self-awareness, first of all, to be able to evaluate what exact situation am I getting myself into? What can I do to help the situation? Again, football is pretty simple, in the sense that, it's a pretty specific position I was entering. If you're a head coach, you're entering a different type of position. You're going as a quarterback, and I'm looking at how I've played quarterback for 20 years, then I'm looking at how the person here played quarterback prior to me, and I'm going, okay, well, if I was in that situation, this is the decision I would have made. And then it's just a daily process of, okay, this is my job, and this is how I'm going to try to improve this position on the team, through communication, humility, respect, caring, learning. And everybody does that to different degrees. But again, you've got to be able to apply those, real time. And again, some of it's physical, some of it's mental, some of it's emotional, and you have probably a broad overall strategy that you're trying to accomplish. But then there's also little details that you've got to be able to figure out on a daily basis. And it takes a long time. It doesn't happen overnight, because if you come in and, the last thing anyone wants to hear is, hey, this is what we did at the Patriots. No one wants to hear that. That's like,
I remember when being in package goods, people would say, oh, well, I worked at Procter & Gamble. Everybody go, oh, they start to gag.
So the same thing. I mean, nobody wants to hear that. And I was really conscious, like, I don't want to hear that either. You know what I mean? I want to earn what we're doing going forward. And, this is how the Bucs do it. And this is how I think I can help improve what we're doing. And I was very, I came into a situation where everybody was really receptive of that as well. They really allowed me to be who I am. And I think I'm very grateful for the leadership that is here prior to me with the players, some of the real veteran core players that were doing an amazing job at what they did, and an amazing coaching staff that the coaches are, they provide a huge, obviously, responsibility on the team. But the one thing the coaches can't do is they can't play. And the players, as much as they want to coach and give strategy and leadership, it's up to the players to go execute. And, I've always loved being in the playing because I get to go do it. The coaches really allowed me to be the best I could be as well, which I was obviously very grateful for.
Tom, you're such a big believer in culture, and we've talked about this before. And I remember you telling me when you were with the Patriots, you said the difference between us and the other teams, it's 3:00 Tuesday afternoon, it's snowing, it's freezing, and we're out there going through it like it's just, we got to win this drive to win the Super Bowl, and so, when you got to the Bucs, what did you see as in the difference between the cultures versus what you had at the Patriots? What was a big cultural difference?
There's a lot of things. I mean, just think of the climates, first of all. The Northeast is very different than the Southeast. Being down in Tampa, the most difficult part of the season in Tampa is August. And when it's just incredibly hot and humid, the season gets much easier for the players as the season goes because the weather gets better. So you really need to be in good shape early. Up in the Northeast, it's very different. The season gets much harder as the season goes because the climate gets much colder. Um, Everything. I mean, the practice facility, the lifestyle, the aspects of football are very different. When you're a warm weather team, it's much more suited to the passing game than being in a cold weather climate. It's the difference between golf in Palm Springs and golf in Northern Ireland. I mean, it's a different style. There's much more activity for the players off the field down here. There's beaches, there's clubs, there's nightlife, there's casinos. I mean, in the Northeast, there's none of that. You don't have to deal with any of those things. I mean, this is such a destination for people to come on vacation. Up in Foxborough, Massachusetts, that's not really a destination. And then when it comes to the football, I would say Coach Arians does, he's an incredible leader, but he's not a micromanager. He allows the coaches to, okay, you guys coach, I'm going to see what I'm going to see, and I'm going to add my input where I think I need to add it. And, Coach Belichick is, certainly with the defense, very hands-on with the defense, a little less so with the offense, but a lot with the special teams. It's just, and obviously coronavirus, I really even haven't had a normal season yet. One season it was, with COVID last year, it was entirely different. I haven't even had a full stadium yet. So, again, it's just a lot of things getting used to. And it was good for my brain. It was good for my brain to relearn a drive to work, as simple as that sounds, or to learn new restaurants or to learn new neighborhoods. And
Was there something, Tom, that you felt as a leader when you got there and you saw the culture, which different for obvious reasons that you talked about? Was there something that you felt like you needed to help the team change? Was there something that you really felt needed to be added to the culture?
I felt like, me being myself and doing my job was, gonna based on my experience and what I had gone through, if I can provide some consistency and continuity to the position and a high level of play. I mean, there was so many players that were receptive to what I could bring, because the beneficiary of a good quarterback is good skill position players, good receivers, good tight ends, the line. I mean, I can improve all those positions just by me being me. And, I have a great understanding of the game of football. I played it for a long time, and it doesn't take away from what the guy before me, Jameis, was trying to do here. It's just, I've had a lot of experience. I know how to get things done. I know how to play the game. I think through the game. I'm much more of a I think that through the game more mentally than physically. I believe that football is 60 or 70% mental. And yeah, I need to physically be able to be capable of pass the football. But at the same time, my brain is going to allow me to excel and not not physical traits.
Every leader, you come in that new situation and you've got to address the team. And you weren't the coach, but you were Tom Brady. You're the quarterback, and you're going to be the leader of the team just by that. Okay. But tell us about the first time you addressed your team. What did you say to them?
Well, it was, I did it in probably groups of people rather than an entire team. I think when I got here, there was kind of a group of players, maybe 4 guys I got together with. That 4 turned into 7. That 7 turned into 10. That 10 turned into like 12 or 13. And at that point, I thought I had a really good relationship with those 12 or 13 guys where they really could start to feel my presence and feel my personality. And, I'm not someone that lets the details go. I mean, I think I'm very intent on getting things done the way they needed to get done. I mean, and a lot of things I've learned over the years, again, don't mistake activity for achievement. We always say, don't think that's just because you're breaking a sweat, you're getting anything done. I mean, we're not out there just to run around. And I think working hard at the wrong things, allows you to get better at getting worse. If we're going to work at the right things. And I think from the day that I got here, I said, okay, these are the things that I'm going to apply on the field. I know these are the things that are going to come up. This is what we're going to work on. And I started that with just individual workouts with those 3 or 4 players. And I tried to improve that to the 7 guys. And I tried to improve that to the 10 guys. And by the time we got to training camp, I felt like, okay, we're at a decent place. The one thing in pro sports that's most important is continuity. And I'm sure it's a lot like business. The more you're with groups of people, the more you're allowed to anticipate where the issues lie and how quickly you can solve the problems. It's different in football. Football is a simple game, but it's hard to get 11 people on the same page every single play. And then when you add that to the defense, those 11 guys. And then when you add that to a special teams unit, those 11 guys. So then you add that to the other guys who play more roles on the team. Then you add that to a coaching staff. That's the challenge of football. So, I could do that with the offense. It took a while for us to really come together, but I thought that was a pretty natural part of the progression. It's hard to just come out of the gates and be firing on all cylinders when you've never had the opportunity to be together.
So was there a specific moment, Tom, when you knew that, you started out with 7, you go to 12, you keep adding, but was there a specific moment where you had the team looking to you as the leader, or did that happen automatically just because of your track record, or do you recall a moment where you said, "Hey, I've got the team now"?
Yeah, I think it was everyone was pretty receptive. I mean, I think by the time that training camp started, the guys were pretty receptive to saying, "All right, Tom, we're here to do what you'd love for us to do." I mean, from a player standpoint, that's my guys, the guys that I'm doing battle with out there. They're looking to me saying, "Okay, get it done for us." And I think as the season went along, I got a little more trust of the defense. I got a little more trust of the coaching staff because, again, the coaching staff provides a roadmap. And, we want to follow that roadmap as players. And, again, they're super receptive to me having, input into those things and vice versa. It's not like Tom Brady walks in and Tom Brady says, "Hey, do all these things." And I don't think that's the way to do it. You say, "Hey, how do we do it?" And they teach me. And at the same time, I say, "Okay, well, I like that. I'd love to do this because this is the way that I've done it for 20 years. And I can really anticipate, these things. And I'm really good at running these plays." And they'd say, "Great, let's do those things." And I think it was a great combination of things that we're able to learn from one another that allowed us to, reach the point where we wanted to reach by the end of the year.
So Tom, you come in this new situation, you have a lot of new players you got to get to know. How did you go about assessing the talent you had to work with?
I did a lot of that before I even got here. I was kind of looking around in free agency saying, where can I go be successful? And what place can allow me to be the player that I'm capable of being? It's if you're a running back and you don't have an O-line, it doesn't matter how good you are at running back. If you're a cornerback and you don't have a good pass rush, you're not going to be that good of a player. If you're a quarterback and you don't have guys to throw the ball to, it's going to be very difficult for you to showcase your abilities on the field. So part of my choosing Tampa was I looked down and I saw Mike Evans and I saw Chris Godwin and I saw Cam Brate and OJ Howard. They have a lot of talent. If I can play with those guys, I think I can really, be the player I want to be. And then I was able to choose here. Rob Gronkowski came out of retirement. Antonio Brown, we signed Antonio Brown midway through the year. Well, at that point, I had a lot of talented players I was working with. And it's really fun for me because, again, on the other end of those passes that I'm throwing, they need to be completed. And I had a high level of talent that I was working with that was able to catch the passes and make me look good. So it's really fun to go, man, I want to see how great I can be, but I can only be great if the other guys around me are great. And I have a great group of players, not only last year, but I'm really excited to see what we can accomplish this year because now we got a year under our belt together.
Yeah, well, the whole world's waiting to see that happen, And Tom, do you have a process that you use for going one-on-one with a new teammate?
I've said this for, in my personal life, but also in my professional life, CCC, clear current communication, and why that's so important. Really being clear, not, man, I'm going to say something and see if they can figure it out, or I'm going to, try to dance around a topic. And then current, what's happening in the moment, not, hey, this thing happened 2 months ago and it's really bothering me. It's no, hey, this is the situation we're currently dealing with. And you got to communicate. And, so many people don't want to communicate. So many people want to, just keep to themselves, silo their conversations, deal with people that only are going to agree with them. And I believe in, CCC. Hey, be really clear about what it is, and let's be really current about what we're talking about, and let's talk. And I think if we work on those things, then, I don't want to have to guess all the time what you're thinking. We can't solve problems if you're thinking one thing or I'm thinking another. Or I really find it difficult for people who create expectations without telling the other person. This is what I was expecting them to do, but they never did it. I'm like, well, did you ever tell them? Well, no. Why? I mean, they should know. I'm like, get that out of here. I don't want to hear that. Now I can hold you accountable if I told you, hey, do this, or I'm expecting, this to happen, a particular situation. If you don't do that situation or that, what I've said, we're going to have a talk. But if I don't ever tell you what I want, then how can I hold you accountable for that? So CCC is really important on a personal level, but it's certainly really important in a professional environment as well.
Hey, CCC, that sounds like a title of a great book someday. I love that. That's a great leadership lesson, and it's so simple. It's fantastic. You obviously, the game so well. And when you see opportunities to improve player personnel, how do you go about influencing that it gets done? Because you're not the general manager. How do you say, hey, we really need a Gronk, or we really need a Antonio Brown?
Well, I know they're very talented because I've seen them perform. And I do think from one thing I've learned about, again, sports and life is, in order to maximize your potential, there are physical aspects, certainly in sports, you need to handle. And I would say that could be your training, that could be your recovery, that could be your body, that could be your skill set. Mentally, your ability to know what to do and know how to do it. And then emotionally, how do you be your best every single day? How can you bring your best emotion to the team every day and not the volatility? And I think that's what I try to mentor people on these days. I look at them and I say, where can I add value to them? Because I want to see people succeed. I want to see Rob Gronkowski succeed in every possible way. I love him. He's like, he's like a little brother to me. I want to see him be his best self. Antonio Brown, I want to see Antonio succeed in every way for not only him personally, but for his future in his life. And I think
Tom, how did you go about influencing Tampa to get Antonio Brown?
Yeah, and I think
because you see that.
Yeah, that's a good, I think it's, again, it's CCC with Rob and Antonio saying, okay, you have to figure out what their goals are, but then say, okay, where can I impart my wisdom on them? Because I have a great understanding of all those things. Physically, how are you feeling? How can I help you feel better in terms of your physical self? What do you need to do in order to feel great so you can perform well? I'd say mentally those guys were very talented in terms of, they're both football geniuses. I mean, they know it. And then emotionally, like, how can you strike a chord to remind them of the priorities that they have so that, emotionally they can find the stability that, volatility in your emotions is very tough, because we're emotional beings. There's emotional things that can impact our life outside of football that take away from our on-field performance. So how do you eliminate some things that are challenging off the field so that when you show up to work every morning, you're in a good place? How do you surround yourself with people that want to see you succeed and bring the best out of you? So I think, again, it's just CCC with them. Hey, I think we're steering away from where we want to go. I think we got to get back on track. Something as simple as that. Hey, this is where we were at. Is that where we want to go? Or did you like the direction we were heading? Oh, you're right. Let me do more of the things that work and less of the things that don't work.
So you CCC with these guys that when it comes to like the general manager and saying, hey, look, Antonio Brown, if we could bring him in, it could be the missing ingredient that we need to take us all the way. Do you just go have CCC with the general manager?
Absolutely. And I said, look, I played with Antonio and I really like him. We have a great connection. Has a high football IQ. He's extremely talented. And I feel like I can count on him. And we need to have a personal relationship, Antonio and I, and we do. The last thing Antonio wants is to let me down. And I don't want to let him down. And I think when I'm around other great players, that's great motivation. I don't want those guys, if they're bringing their best, I've got to bring my best. And, Antonio had a relationship with Bruce, and Bruce, our head coach, really liked Antonio. He made the ultimate decision to say, look, and I'm not going in there to tell anyone what to do. My job as quarterback, I'm not there to tell coaches what to do. I'm not there to tell general managers what to do. I'm there to support their decisions, and to say, yes, I think that I can really help here. So if you guys choose to bring him in, I'm all for it. And I'm going to do everything I can to help you make it successful. And I think that's what my role is. I don't want to be the general manager. I don't want to be the head coach. I want to do my job. But when it comes to my job, I want to support the things that they're trying to accomplish too. And again, that just comes from communication with myself and Bruce, myself and Jason Light, who's our GM. And, I think that's how you get things done.
Yeah. You obviously have this incredible belief in yourself, and you got to believe. If you don't believe, nothing's going to happen. As a leader coming into a new situation, how do you go about spreading that belief? Is it just doing the work yourself?
Yeah. And I think it's, fortunately, I've had a track record of success that guys could look to without ever having a relationship with me. And naturally they believe. And I think that's a great part of my career. It's something I have to, I achieved success early in my career. So that helped as well when I was a younger player. Guys wanted to, we as athletes want to be successful, and we want to surround ourselves with other successful people. We don't want to play and lose. We want to play and win. And, guys have come to play with me because they have a belief that they can win when they're with me. And again, I want to try to see them and say, okay, well, I can look at a player like Gronk. I know why we need a Gronk. I know what Gronk can do to a team. I know what he can do for us in terms of our offense. I know what his ability in the pass game and the run game is. I know what he can do for the locker room. I know what he can do on the practice field. Gronk's very emotionally stable. Gronk, if you're in a foxhole, you want Rob Gronkowski with you. So if the opportunity presents itself to get a player like Rob Gronkowski on the team, I am 100% supportive of that because I want all those guys. I want all those guys that when the going gets tough, you want Rob Gronkowski on your side. So Mike Evans, I learned that about Mike. Mike was one of the all-time great receivers, but at the same time, Mike hadn't experienced, playoff football, because the team just couldn't figure out how to get on the right track. And watching Mike step up to the challenge of, okay, this is kind of how things have been, which basically a mediocre team, 8-8, maybe a little less than that, to, okay, these are expectations for a championship level team. And then watching Mike rise to the occasion and step up every step of the way and embrace that challenge and really embrace me challenging him. He loved it. And he was like, this is what I want to be. I'm this type of player as well. Again, that's just 1 year. Now I'm looking to see how Mike takes it to the next level. And I can already see it this year, how Mike's taken it to the next level. His whole offseason training is better. His whole training camp is better. He's in the best position to succeed now than he's ever been. So now for me, is watching him as his friend, I'm excited to see him play because I believe he's going to have his best year he's ever had.
That's great. And I have to ask you this with Tom. Did you feel more pressure in your first game at Tampa Bay because it was so highly anticipated than you did at your last game at New England in the Super Bowl?
That's a good question. Again, I think I was a little bit naive toward the pressure I'd feel. It felt very much like football. We got our butt kicked pretty bad in New Orleans, my first game for the Bucs. That was very humbling. And you know what? I wasn't, I guess I was discouraged from losing, but I wasn't discouraged from our team. I realized that, we still got a long way to go. As much as I put into last offseason, as much as we put into training camp, as prepared as I thought I was, we were still a long ways away. And it was good. It was humbling and allowed us to work harder and get closer. And the losses teach you, as I'm sure you know, when things don't go well in business, those teach you a lot more than when things are going well. And if you learn from those errors and mistakes, you can reach a higher level.
Like anyone who switches jobs, you had to get used to a new boss. What was the biggest challenge going from a Belichick to a Coach Aaron's?
I think just It's the process of just getting to know, personality and getting to know, what he's looking for and what is important to him. And, you want your head coach to be satisfied with you. I mean, I think one thing as a player, it's a unique relationship. You're always trying to somehow gain the approval of the head coach. You want the coach to be happy with how you're performing. So me understanding what his expectations were for me, and Bruce has a very different personality than Bill. Bruce is the first offensive coach I've ever had. In 30 years of playing football, he was the first offensive head coach, which was very different for me. Things were more suited for the offense. In practice, offense was like, hey, this is what we're focusing on today. Is more offensive, strategically thought out, as opposed to Coach Belichick over the years, who's, I would say, more defensive minded. And even a way it was in college for me. So we just kind of go for it on offense. And whatever happens, happens. It's a different type of strategy. Sometimes we were more protective of the football, of the defense. Here, I would say the defense has to be more protective of the offense in a way, which is very unique. And again, a good eye-opener for me. I just had learned one way, and I like, this way of the offense is very exciting. We do. And we try to go for it. Every time we get the ball, we're trying to be explosive and attacking every single time.
That's fun to watch, and looking back, and I was thinking about this talk here, this conversation. Early in the season, I remember you were criticized by Coach Arians. He went on ESPN and he said that you weren't performing like the Tom Brady that performs in practice, okay? And you're my friend, and I have to tell you that irked me, when I saw it on ESPN. How about you?
No, that's good for me to hear at times too, and I think that encourages conversation between the two of us. And again, Bruce, one thing about Bruce that I absolutely love is he says what he feels, he says what he thinks, and it's just how he does it, and it's his style, and it's nothing personal.
Do you think it was a calculated move to whip his horse?
Absolutely. I think he does a good job of that, and he knows what he's doing. He's got a great pulse for that, and he knows what he's doing.
Did that take pressure off you because he treated you like everybody else on the team on national television?
Absolutely, and it's good. Now, I don't think it takes pressure off you, but it's good for you because the other players want to know I'm accountable as well. Calling me out in that way allowed me to have conversations with him and myself. You're right. I need to perform better. I need to play better. And if I'm going to play better, this is how I'm going to prepare more. And, it's a whole trickle-down effect.
Later on that year, Tom, Coach Arians said you were like the coach of the team, and you didn't get the same opportunity to do that at New England. Now, was that really the case at New England, or how did it make you feel when you've evolved like that, where you said you're like a coach of the team?
Well, I'm older than most coaches at this point. If you look in the NFL, I'd say there's probably 10 or 12 coaches that are younger than me. And I have a great understanding of the game. So in a lot of ways, I am the coach on the field. That's just the way it is. That's how quarterbacks are. And when you have someone of my experience, you want me to be the coach on the field. You'd rather turn the reins over to an experienced player than, a rookie quarterback. I mean, unfortunately, they may be the coach on the field, but they don't have much experience. So, I think Bruce and I have a great relationship where, it's just, there's no beating around the bush. BA says, Tom, I need you to do this. No problem, coach. I'll do it. And I'll say, BA, I need us. This is what I would like us to do. No problem, Tom. That's what we'll do. And that was really exciting for me. I'd say in New England, it's it's much more coaching focused. That's just the reality of that organization. And it has been, and it's just over the years, I was part of that whole transgression. And it's really worked well there. There's it's the history and the success speaks for itself. And the continuity there really allowed some great things to happen. And I think what you'd love to do is have the same continuity here. And we have that of players, of coaches. And again, I think it just speaks to, I really want to see what happens this year. I really want to see how we perform. And I'm just excited to get started. We get started here pretty shortly. And I want to see how the work pays off this year.
Great leaders coach themselves, Tom. What's the conversation you have with yourself when things don't go your way?
I'm pretty tough on myself. I don't make excuses. I don't blame others, but I want to find a solution. I mean, I don't criticizing without a solution is just essentially complaining. You may as well be a Monday morning quarterback at that point. The critique for me is all about the solution. If something doesn't work, it's why didn't it work? And how do we get it to work? Not, you know, some BS reason why it wasn't successful. Let's get to the root of the problem. Let's solve it. And I think that's the best way to go about it.
When was it, Tom, did you have a pivotal moment when you went into the season last year where you actually believed the team could go all the way?
I wasn't sure. I didn't think about that destination point. I was more focused on the process of improving on a daily basis rather than the final destination. I mean, it was a series of steps. It wasn't any one thing. I mean, there was 1,000 things that we needed to do better from week one all the way through the end of the season. And by the end of the season, I'd say we were at a pretty great point. I thought we were still improving as a football team as the season ended. I didn't really know we were going to win the Super Bowl until that clock clicked 000 at the end.
That was great to see. I'll tell you that. And not many people knew that during the season you were playing on a bad knee. And what do you tell yourself, when you've got an injury like that and motivates you to persevere? And, let's face it, 2 weeks after the Super Bowl, I think you had a knee operation. I saw you just right after you had that operation.
Yeah.
That surprised me, I got to tell you. I didn't know you had that kind of pain.
I had been dealing with I tore my ACL, MCL 13 years ago. I had torn my MCL a few times over the course of the seasons that I just kind of dealt with. And it got looser and looser and looser to the point where there was no stability in my knee. And I knew it at the beginning of last off season that, my MCL wasn't doing its job. And I basically just taped my knee every day to create stability for like 7 or 8 months. And I knew that if I could tape it during the game and wear a brace, it would be fine. And, hopefully it wouldn't get any worse. And it was already bad. So, I could still play. I just couldn't play necessarily the way that I wanted to. And I know that sounds it sounds bad to say because, we end up winning the Super Bowl and that's not what I mean when I say that. I just, I knew that I wasn't physically as the way that I would hope to. I just had to spend a lot of time and energy on it with Alex, who I worked with, and he did an amazing job. I mean, he's just literally a miracle worker. It's hard to describe what he's capable of. For someone in my 22nd year, there's no way I could achieve the success I could without having my business partner, best friend, Alex, my body coach there every step of the way, treating my knee. And, we worked through literally a torn MCL to have surgery. And as soon as the season ended, I knew we would joke, okay, last day we're taping this. And then,
well, you do everything you can to possibly avoid surgery. I mean, I know that from my time at TB12
Absolutely.
and the work that I did there, and, but, you have the knee injury, you work your way, you get to the Super Bowl. Now you're on this big stage where you've been there. You've won it 6 times before. You're going for your 7th victory. And how do you go about transferring the knowledge you have on how to handle that big stage, a stage that most of the people on the team had never really been on? How did you transfer your learning to them, or did you?
I kind of gave them, from my experience, what I felt from a player standpoint. I mean, it's those games, you're going to remember those games for the rest of your life. And, all I could talk about was my experience and not, what the media would say or what the families would say. Guys, this is what I went through. This is how I would handle this. It's once the game's kicked off, it's football, but before the game, there's a lot more hype. But don't get caught up in the hype. We have a routine. It's worked. This isn't the time to try something new. Like, let's just go do what we're capable of doing. And, the guys responded, and a lot of them know how to handle it. A lot of these guys are big time college players. They've been in big games before. Not quite the Super Bowl big, but, there's a lot of big games where a lot of people are watching. And I'm just proud of the way that everybody rose to the challenge. Leonard Fournette, Chris Godwin, Scotty Miller, Antonio, Gronk, Cam Brate, the line, the defensive players, Levante David, one of the all-time great linebackers in NFL history, and Dominican Sue and Jason Pierre-Paul and Devin White. I mean, we got a group of guys that are champions.
You love these guys, don't you?
Yeah, they're just
You love it just the way you talk about them. It's like they have to feel that love.
they're studs, man. They just know how to get it done, and they're warriors. And I see what they go through every day. I see the commitment it takes for them. They're just amazing guys, amazing players. And now it's about what we can accomplish this year. There's no more. What's happened is great. Nobody could take it away from us. No one's taking that ring away or that banner, but we got a different goal and mission this year, and it's going to be fun.
I could tell even in this conversation you're getting tired of me asking questions about last year. You're ready to get on to the year. That's yesterday's newspaper here, but I'm going to ask you one more, and then we'll move on to maybe some other stuff here. But so as leaders, we always have competition, and you mentioned studs. Okay, the studs on your team. Well, there's always a young gun. And everyone talked about the Brady-Mahomes matchup. How did you think about going head to head with him? Did that affect your mindset in any way?
I mean, he's obviously a stud, and I really love his style of play. He is as talented as a quarterback as there is in the NFL right now in terms of his ability to make plays, get the ball down the field. He does it with his feet. He's a really good leader. Great creativity. I think that's what people appreciate a lot from him, his creativity, but just so talented. And I had played him before. I played teams, at the Chiefs when I was at the Patriots. You're not going to beat him, scoring 7 points. You got to go in there and you got to have no fear. And when you play great players, that's what it's being. A lot like, look, I played Peyton Manning for a long time. There was nobody who could dominate the game like Peyton Manning. I mean, he was phenomenal. And Aaron Rodgers is another one. So I played the best for a long time. And I love going against those guys because it brings out the best in you as well.
One more question about last year. So you get this decisive win in the Super Bowl. You prove to the world you can do it in a new venue. You do it without Bill Belichick, and everybody has their own rumors and wondering about how well you get along with him and how much do you enjoy, showing the world that you didn't need him, et cetera, et cetera. How do you really feel about that subject? I mean, let's get rid of all the BS. Yeah. How do you really feel?
I mean, I went on a different journey. That's how I looked at it. Nothing I've done takes away from what we accomplished. It was a magical 20 years, and I left it on the best terms. And I think it was just a new journey for me. And the journey I'm on, I don't really care what happens with anyone else. I don't care what happens with any other team. I don't care what happens with any other coach, any other organization. I care what's going on with what I'm trying to accomplish. So, again, it was not about that, the Patriots, I was no concern, how they were doing to me, not in a bad way, just in a way that whether they were successful or not, I wanted to be successful because this is where I was putting my time and energy, and I was going to be the best I could be for my team. And that's where my energy was focused. And I just,
Well, there we have it right there, straight from the horse's mouth. That is the answer. Yeah. Okay. So don't ask him that anymore,
I know.
Everybody.
And just, look, I was so grateful for my experience there. I think just one thing that's really important for me to say is I had 20 years of great memories and relationships. And I certainly couldn't be the player I am without all of the people that impacted my life from that organization. I was just very grateful to be in this magical place with great people, great coaches. Obviously, Coach Belichick. Mr. Kraft was a great mentor for me, and along with amazing players that, accomplished so many things together. So I learned a lot from them. They learned a lot from me, and I was able to go somewhere else and impart a different different wisdom and impart different skill sets. And And just so happy we accomplished what we did last year, but that was totally separate from what I had done previously.
A great example of a win, win, and another win, which is fantastic. And Tom, I remember when we first met, I told you I couldn't stand you. I mean, I couldn't
You're a
stand the
Colts fan, for
Patriots.
God's sakes.
I really, I just, and because the Patriots were kind of like the Yankees. Most people, and I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. Most people outside of New England, basically hated them, and that had to rub off on you. And I remember sending you a note after the Super Bowl. One of the things I loved last year is I felt like people really got to see the great guy all of your friends know that you are, because you were in a new setting. You got out of that setting where you were no longer the villainous patriot. Do you think that broadened your appeal?
I definitely sensed that when I travel, I kind of always, there's a little litmus test, for when I travel around and so forth. And I'm in all parts of the country, and, just how people react. And I would say it was definitely different, so it was definitely different. Just being in, when I look at it from a real perspective, if Tom Brady's always part of this team, the Patriots, and every time the Patriots win, it's aggravating. I believe, that's just the way it is. So for me to go somewhere else was maybe less aggravating.
That's a good point. Tom, I like everybody else, you got a lot of followers on Instagram, and you seem to be having a lot of fun with yourself these days, making fun of your speed by in the Madden game, running a slow 40-yard dash. If you haven't seen this, everybody, go on Instagram. It's really fun to watch all this stuff. Watching you throw the Super Bowl trophy from one boat to another boat. So it looks like you're taking yourself less seriously, or you're having fun with yourself, or whatever. Not that you ever took yourself too seriously, but is there any strategy behind this, or is it just you just having fun with the social media?
Yeah, I think it's probably more natural for me to be more open than, I think, I got into a rhythm of life that was probably a little more robotic, and I think more my voice is different because, my situation's different. Again, I'm living in a totally different place with new experiences, and different parts of my personality come out. So just the setting is different. And I think that really has allowed me for people to see more of a 360 of me. And, I like to have a lot of fun. I laugh a lot. I really believe that being positive and finding the learnings and the bright spots and things is really important for me in life.
Well, this has been a lot of fun, Tom. I want to begin to wrap this up with a rapid round of Q&A, a lightning round here. Are you ready for
Great,
it?
I'm ready.
Okay. All right. What's the one word that describes Tom Brady as a Patriot, and the one word that describes Tom Brady as a Buccaneer?
I'd say as a Patriot, it was discipline, and as a Buccaneer, authentic.
And your favorite song for getting fired up to play?
There's a great rapper, Jay-Z, who really always gets me hyped up. There's a song that's called the Public Service Announcement. So it's a pretty cool, every time I hear it, I get fired up.
I think I'm going to listen to that right after this conversation. Your favorite social media platform and why?
Probably Instagram, just because I like the visual aspect.
Favorite book or podcast you've learned from in the past couple months?
You know which podcast I love the most. So, this one, what book? Good question. I've been in my playbook a lot lately. So probably my football playbook's the one that I've been studied, focused on.
Yes, no. Do you think you can play till 50?
I definitely think I can play till 50.
Wow. So now, Tom, you've got this whole set of challenges that comes with sustaining success at a new team, and you're actually the favorite to win the Super Bowl. You've already talked about you just can't wait to get going. What's your message to your team now, and what's the message you're giving yourself?
I think it's going to be a new set of challenges. So I don't know what's going to come up. I don't know what adversities we're going to face. There's going to be a lot that we don't know about. There's going to be, again, 1,000 things that come up. I want us to be ready to face those, whatever they may be. So I don't really care what comes up. I'm not going to make excuses for anything, I'm going to attack each day with the right process, with the right emotional state of mind, and, try to be as close to perfect as possible. And, understanding that probably will never be that way.
I know, Tom, you're an avid golfer, so I have to ask you this one. As a business leader, I hopefully I knew my stuff and I could operate pretty freely. But I have a challenge bringing that same freedom to golf. Can you play freely in golf like you do in football? And how do you manage the high expectations you have that you obviously are able to deliver in your business world when you tee it up in golf?
Golf is a very, obviously, as we know, humbling sport. It's very imperfect. I think what I'm trying to do with golf is just enjoy being out there more and less about scores and more about, did I have fun with the experience? So I played more golf this off season than I have in the past, just because it's been more accessible. And I'm trying to use it as a time to decompress as opposed to, find my competitive spirit. I feel like I have enough competitive drive. And there's definitely moments where I play in these tournaments that I get pissed off, which it's just that competitiveness takes over. But, for golf in and of itself, I want to go out there and just enjoy it. So unless I'm playing with some of our buddies who give it to me and are kind of a pain in my ass. So like Sam and Jimmy and,
yeah, I know who they are. Can you tell us a little bit about your new weekly radio show you're going to host with Larry Fitzgerald this season? And I'm kind of hoping that you guys bring me on as a guest and ask me some podcast questions.
I love it. That's a great idea. That will be fun. Yeah, it's once a week. It's on Sirius Radio. It's a great platform. They got obviously a ton of listeners. Again, I want it to be really focused on empowering people to be the best they can be. And I know there'll be a lot of sports-centric fans. And I think Larry and I will try to bring our learnings of the sports to the masses and see how people can apply some of those winning strategies in their life.
I love that. And that's what the world needs, and you got a lot of things happening now. Your future seems really bright, but, speaking of the future, my friend Stephen Covey talks about living life in a crescendo, where your best work is still ahead of you. You've had an incredible career, and I saw where on HBO, the show The Shop, you basically said that you admitted that you're near the end of the playing time in the NFL, although you think you can play to 50, and I hope you do if you want. How are you thinking about life and work around the corner? We just talked about this radio show you have. You're going to have all kinds of possibilities. How do you think about it?
Yeah, I'll have different business opportunities. And I think when I'm really focused on those things, they're going to be, just being able to impact people. And look at what you've done, and how you're impacting the world in a positive way. And I think that's why people want to support you because, you have done an amazing job in your career and people really trust you and you have a lot of credibility in what people want to hear about. And, I think all your friends want to come on and support your podcast because they know you're trying to do the right thing. And hopefully I can have, some of that impact as well. Hopefully people can see me and go, wow, I really like how Tom's done things. I think he's got some credibility in these areas. And, I'm going to help support him and try to make some contributions to people beyond throwing footballs. And I look forward to doing it. I really still look forward to throwing footballs, but when that's come and gone, I'll look forward to, trying to do other things that can have a similarly positive impact.
Well, let me tell you something, Tom. We all love how you're doing things. We all love the impact you're having on this world. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you joining me in my quest to really try to help make the world a better place by developing better leaders by sharing your insights. So thank you very much.
Yeah, happy to do it, obviously. And again, glad we could do this, and fingers are crossed that it leads to something pretty successful here down the road.
I can't wait for podcast number 4. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, David.